much for coming here and seeing this fireside chat, the extra treat for you. Welcome to this chat that is titled Cracking the Code with Peter Sunde. Peter Sunde?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Big applause.
You're going to regret this.
You know, as the name fireside chat applies, it's like this is going to be a cozy, nice, very political probably talk, but in a nice environment.
But basically what she's saying is that I didn't want to prepare, so she had to prepare.
And I have prepared some questions, but else we'll just take it as it goes. Before we begin, I just want to say a few practical notes. So the first keynote will be after lunch in the Glitch room with Cyrus Clark, the founder of Grow Your Own Cloud, for the ones of you who don't know, at 2:10. So hope to see you there, all of you. Also, a short reminder that if you registered for the lunch tracks, remember there are these lunch tracks where you can go up and talk to people about special different subjects. It's upstairs and food is served. So if you already registered, go there. I know there are also more free spaces, so just go up there in case you want to. My name is Sofie Hvitved, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a futurist from the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies. I'm the host of this year's Øredev, so you might have seen me yesterday at the Glitch stage as well. Okay. We're here for you, so enough about all the practical stuff. The discussion today will center around two primary topics. One, ethics is important. And two, you're all morally obliged to this. So I guess that kind of wraps it up, right?
Yeah, that's good. We can.
So yeah, we're going to talk about the pressure of being politically neutral in coding and how that might actually not be what we need from a developer community. And I'm really excited to share the stage with you, Peter, mainly because we had such a great discussion, I think. It was really interesting a couple of days ago when we were talking about what this fireside chat should be about. And for those of you who don't know Peter, Google him or ChatGPT him. I tried actually yesterday to ChatGPT and see if it would hallucinate something interesting.
What did it say?
Well, it's just kind of copied Wikipedia, I would say. So nothing dramatically different there. So that was quite accurate. Okay, so I'll just leave it at you're a human.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. But I'm, as always, unprepared. So well, that's good.
Well, so well, a little bit prepared you are, because we talked about how we should start this conversation on what is top of mind for you right now, and that's the Tesla strike. So a strike that started with Tesla failing to play by Swedish labor rules, according to the unions, and now the strike is beginning to spread. So why do you think that is a relevant place to start for the participants at Øredev?
Because I think it's most of all Okay, so show of hands, who is a member of the union here? How many people drive a Tesla? Okay, good ratio. But for me, that's kind of important. I'm also sad that not more people are members of unions. Because for me, it's always been very important that you kind of give back to society. And society in Sweden is taking care of a lot of people here. They're not members of of the union, which has been good to them. So that's been quite kind of upsetting for me to see that all of these American companies that a lot of people in this room would look up to, because amazing technology, fun projects to work on, all of these things that are on a personal level deeply interesting, but they're also all of these morally questionable decisions made by these companies that we kind of see past. Of course, everyone talks about Elon Musk being whatever he is, and people will find him interesting, even though he's a shitty guy, but he also made all of these things happen. And then you have this questionable discussion. So we have this idea that we want to excuse people for their stupid behavior because they also do good things. And I think that's of course okay, but we also need to look at the big picture. So for me, it's important that people are on strike at Tesla, and Klarna just signed also an agreement with the union, which I'm happy about. I was not expecting that to happen. There's also been Spotify, my #1 hate company in Sweden. Maybe #2. It's also some newspapers I don't like. But basically, I'm really upset that these companies that have been thriving from what society has given, and they don't want to give back. And it ends up with people in that are in the coding community that work for these and have the possibility of actually influencing and making sure that other people who are not as privileged have better working conditions.
Because I think that's what we talked about, right? That all of you, most of you are really privileged people. And sometimes privileged people don't think so much about the bigger picture.
Someone is always a little bit more privileged. I also think that you don't see your own self-worth or your own self-privileges sometimes.
So what do you think people here should do apart from joining a union? Is that sort of...
No, that's really important, but also like talking about ethics and moral decisions. Like as I mentioned to you, I was on a conference like 10 years ago, and we talked to a lot of people about drones. They were making drones, and people work for like a startup companies making drones. And I wanted to ask them, what do you think these drones can be abused for, like used for, that is not your idea? And like, no, they can't really. They're going to be used for like delivering medicines to rural areas, maybe delivering pizzas or something else that you would imagine in your safe space. This is going to be the future of drones. But right now, if you ask the question, like, oh yeah, I work for like, if you work on doing drones, most likely you work for a government institution or some weapons manufacturer doing, improving bombing facilities of kids in Gaza or in Israel. That's kind of like that's the outcome of the same people that just want to deliver medicines. So like, if we could have that discussion maybe 10 years ago, and decide like what should be the ethical guidelines about the technology we build, it would be a different outcome today. And I'm not going to blame people for this, because that's what happens. You're young, you want to do cool code, cool technology, all of these things. But you could also add like that thinking, like, okay, let's just make sure that they don't get used for things that we don't want. Because it's very easy now, but it's very hard 10 years down.
So as a futurist, I really like that thought about being more long-term, sort of thinking of the implications that might lead to it. But how can you sort of work with that more sort of concrete as a developer, with inserting, when you do these tiny bits and pieces and...
Like tell your boss to fuck off if they want to do something stupid. That's totally okay. And in Sweden, you have the possibility of doing that. In Scandinavia in general. Other countries, not so much. So like we need to make sure that we still keep those privileges around. So that's one of the things why I like the union, because they want to push for like, all of these, the Swedish model being kept. So you don't end up like, if you're the not nice person that says something which makes the boss, uncomfortable, you're going to get fired in the US, for instance. You leave on the day. And that's not something we want here. And I think it's also for businesses in Europe, this is a good thing, because we have the possibility of having better employees that, have a better life if you have, that as a way to compete with the US companies. So it's also like for business it's good, for humans it's good, for society it's good. So yeah.
Oh, but that's interesting. And also we talked about our boundaries constantly shifting, right? What we consider to be good. When are we good in what we do? You mentioned the concept of green ammunition. Did anybody hear about that? So that's something that Daniel Ek...
Yeah, he's invested in, Daniel Ek, who started Spotify. He invested in green ammunition. Green technology is always good, so green ammunition. Basically lead-free bullets, so when you kill someone and they die, they don't poison the ground, which is great.
Essentially good.
Yeah.
But where does that leave the boundaries? What? Yeah. And so how do you think about this?
Thinking about all of it, it's like, it's a little bit culty, these things. Like, it feels good, you join something which want to do something good, and I do believe that people generally want to do good. But the big picture is really fucked up when you do green ammunition. It's like something is totally off.
Have you seen, because let's talk a little bit about Google's former motto, don't be evil. Yeah. So what do you think happened in the tech industry over the last decades? Because we were both at a conference called Reboot. Anybody else attended a conference called Reboot in Denmark, in Copenhagen, about, 20 years ago?
I think most people here are not 40 plus. I'm not so sure if you're 40 plus, but I'm 40. I'm over 40.
So. How many people here are over 40? See, there are a lot of people over 40
also,
here. How many?
I think it's the same people that are also members of the union, but that's...
maybe that's it. Maybe. How many young people are a member of a union? If you consider yourself young, you can consider yourself... Yeah. But anyway, Reboot was actually trying to do the same thing, trying to reboot the tech industry, right, from the ground up. A really nice tech festival initiated by Thomas Madsen Mygdal, who's also a friend of you, who also did something called the Tech Festival. And the reason I mention this is that at the Tech Festival back in 2017, so 6 years ago, nice, Sofie, you were part of a session, I think it was 48 hours, where you created the Copenhagen letter. A letter that started like this. To everyone who shapes technology today, we live in a world where technology is consuming society, ethics, and our core existence. It is time to take responsibility for the world we are creating. Time to put humans before business. Time to replace the empty rhetoric of building a better world with a commitment to real action. It's time to organize, and it's time to hold each other accountable. I mean, somehow this sounds like empty cliches.
Yeah, empty
and
rhetoric.
you know, how do we change? And can we actually change? How do we change this direction? I mean, should we just say, no, we drop it? It's never going to happen. We'll leave it all. We'll sell it all to the Saudis and make China decide.
That's basically what's going to happen.
Okay.
So, yeah. No, but seriously, I don't think that we have the possibility of changing that much. But we can change like where we're at. And at least my motto is always like, if I can look myself in the mirror, I'm okay. And then maybe I don't have a lot of friends to hang out with at a cool startup company, but I do something else which I feel happy about every day. Right? And for me, that has a higher value. And the problem is that we always put value is always money when it comes to this industry. And for me, I also want to add value as like the societal value, what it means for people. I wrote a debate article for a Swedish left-wing newspaper published yesterday, where I basically wrote about the problem of being I used to work in fintech a little bit with a startup called Flatter. And every time I met someone in the industry, they always wanted to talk about like how long, what the runway you have until money runs out, how much money you're going to make, who the CEO is, what kind of like, employee share options you have. They never talked about what can happen with society if we have like a huge impact with this technology. And for me, that's so sad because like, okay, working from, we all need money to pay things, but don't you want to feel like you're part of something good and some change? And just that added value of like going to work and not feeling like I just want to leave.
And do you think is there still a chance we can do that in Europe? Because right now, also with generative AI, which I don't actually think is being taught so much about here as I would have thought it would be. What's your perspectives on that?
I can say I have a friend in this room. He's sitting somewhere here, and he doesn't leave his job because he is important at work and he has a high salary, but he's not super happy. And I want him to leave and do something which makes him happy. But you're in this position that when you have your position, your place, and your comfortable life, it's really hard throwing that away for pursuing something which might not happen. And I think that's our basic problem with the privileges we have, that we have it good enough. Also, like most people in this room, if you want to leave a job, you can get a better job with a higher pay somewhere else. So you don't really have to care about, where you're at. So that's a weird situation. This is not very normal in work, I would say. It's a very different industry. I also think that's why people don't see the impact we have. So like, take Google, for instance. They dropped the "Don't be evil" slogan because they wanted to be evil, I guess. Otherwise, you don't drop that. You don't say, I stopped doing no evil. Like that, it's really fucked up. At Tech Festival, actually, instead of the letter, when we talked about writing the letter with like the future, I just said, maybe we can just say "Don't be evil" because that's free, that's available, But for me, it's always like I don't see anything happening. Do you remember that, I think it was Nicaragua and the neighboring country, like 10, 15 years ago, they started invading each other because they had looked at Google Maps where the border was, and they were protecting the border, but the border was wrong on Google Maps. So Google had to send someone to negotiate between Nicaragua and the neighboring country about where that border actually was. And for me, it's a mindfuck when a company like Google has to negotiate, border territory. And why did we let companies have this power and not regulate the companies? So I don't see a way out of this. Have you guys seen Mr. Robot? Yeah, a few. Without spoiling, he does something which is blowing things up. And I like blowing things up. Unfortunately, we won't. But if you want to blow something up, I'm going to be happy.
But that's the thing, right? How do we change this direction? And moving back to generative AI, because I really want to talk about it, even though you don't want to talk about it, or maybe you do. But because when we talked about this, like, what's the bigger picture here? Yeah. Can we even play a role in this? Because speaking of infrastructure, speaking of power, right now, as far as I know, European companies are even, starting to become a big player in this field. And if we want to do good, for society and try to figure out a way to do a growth that is built on values, if that is something that we agree upon. I don't even know if that is something that we agree upon. How should we do that then? What's the perspectives in your opinion?
So the problem is that we can't regulate after. It's like we can ban smoking for future people, maybe, but we can't really ban tobacco from being sold. And big data and tobacco is very the same. We're depending on it. We can't stop. If we knew the possible outcome of it, we wouldn't have allowed it. So that's kind of the situation. I don't think we can regulate. It's going to be bad for our business, so we're just going to accelerate that shift. Then again, we could look at it differently. Like, I'm really happy about the idea that if we have AI, we don't have to work as much. But that's the discussion we could have. Like, so let's tax the companies that work in AI so much that we could have like universal basic income. Maybe that's the idea. If we're going to lose 100,000 jobs, maybe that's great. What we're going to do with the time we have left over. That's more interesting as a human. So an acquaintance of mine, Roland Paulsson, who is a sociologist from Lund, is making a movie with a Swedish-Italian documentary filmmaker who made a movie called Videocracy about how Berlusconi came to power. And this movie is called After Work. And what I noticed is that people don't really have, if you ask someone, like, if you only worked half-time, same amount of money, all of it, what would you fill your time with? What would you do instead? And people get stressed because they don't know what to do, because the whole identity is work. So we just want to work. We need to work 10 hours per day, maybe 12 hours per day to show the boss that we're really good and we commit to the startup or whatever company we work at. It's this weird worth ethic, which is extremely unethical to society and humans as a race. You know, that's so I would like to shift that. Like, what could we do instead of work? Maybe write poetry, maybe read poetry. You know, stuff like that could be more interesting. Going to theaters, hanging out with friends, you know, having sex, whatever. It's more interesting than going to work. But we get stressed when we think about it. Like, I really want to retire. I don't want to have a responsibility. That's my goal. Like, the coming 5 years, I want to retire from responsibilities. And everyone I work with gets stressed because they know that responsibility will fall upon them. And I'm like, no, let's get rid of the responsibility together. Just, you know. But it is interesting that we don't have an idea except work.
How many in here love your work more than your spare time? None?
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
He's
that you guys loved. What? Sorry.
So there's also the only liar in the room. Not the only one, but the biggest liar.
But that's an interesting thought, right? And how many people here work more than 10 hours a day?
Only one who's not lying. Yeah, but yeah.
But I think it's an interesting thing, and obviously it's a cultural shift that will not just happen overnight. So what do you think it takes to do this shift? I mean, you've been in this field for a long time and trying to change also the sort of concept of...
With internet and globalization, we started having this monoculture in companies. So we work with North American values in companies today, in this industry. So I think that it's just becoming worse and worse, to be honest. I'm very depressed, as you've noticed, but I don't think we have a way out of it, except when we hit the wall and it crashes.
And what wall is that then? Could you elaborate?
Different walls for different peoples, I think. But and also like climate change, we know it's happening, all of these things. We don't do anything to stop it. So it's not looking good for humans or society.
So moving a little bit to the future's perspective. So where are we 10 years from now?
Hot planets, very hot planets, in a bad way. People work too much. Elon Musk owns half of Mars or something, I don't know. But definitely accelerated towards more billionaires and more uneven distribution of wealth and more work for most people.
But that can be changed, right? We do have hope, right?
No.
Yeah? No?
No.
How many in here has hope that we have a better sort of society 10 years from now? Yeah. And you're part of creating that, right? So that's kind of the... Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super happy. Like, I had this glimpse of hope a few years ago when Greta Thunberg started doing her, campaigns. And like, fuck, someone who actually understands that you have to fuck all of the rules and just don't care about, what everyone else is saying. Like, the people in power just ignore them. And it was my glimpse of hope. We don't do it in our industry. And not to brag, but I think Pirate Bay was one of the few things that actually was the big finger. Problem is that people built business on top of those same ideals, pretending to be in tune with what we're doing. Because the problem in technology is that, or in all industry, is that I think we want to solve issues with better technology. And I think that most of the things we should do is to look at what we actually want to achieve and don't talk about technology, but like, what's the better outcome with what we have? We don't have to build a better music player. We need to make sure that people have access to things and also find a way to how to pay for it. But it's very rarely we have a need for a technological solution, even though it's cool and fun, and I love to build them. Because it's just interesting on an intellectual level, but it's not what's needed.
Do you think it's an issue with developers that they look technology first? Is that a general issue in the industry?
But if you're a carpenter, like you have a hammer, that's what you're going to try and use. So I think it's totally logical.
Yeah.
But I also think that I know that universities now have also like an ethical, moral part of education now, which I think is super interesting. And I hope that would be more, maybe we could copy that from South America more, where you actually have political discussions, and it's okay to be political. My biggest problem is that technology is we always talk about it being neutral, which has never been neutral. It's also, you build technology for a reason, and you make sure that it's not being abused for a reason. So maybe we should move away from that and be okay with being political. As long as you're on the left wing.
So is that something that you don't talk so much about in the developer world, how political you are? I'm looking at people, and I don't know if that's a weird question, right? But do you see that as an issue, that people try to be non-political and say it's not I don't...
I have a funny story. Like 10, 15 years ago, after the Snowden leaks, some friends and I, we were building an encrypted chat messenger app. This was before Signal and everything. And we wanted to do it to make sure that people had a way of communicating securely and not being monitored by governments. And the founder of WhatsApp reached out. WhatsApp was very big, still had 200, 300 million users. And he reached out and he wanted to talk if we could work together on encrypting WhatsApp. This was before Facebook bought them and everything. So he came to Malmö, which was very interesting, having him here. We went to Veggegården, which is like a vegetarian, whole vegan Chinese restaurant. And he was a little bit upset because he likes meat. I also like meat, but I want them to run around being animals. So I actually like animals, not eating them. So we had it was very obvious that we were very far apart politically. And we had this discussion. He lied quite a bit about how WhatsApp worked, and he said basically he wants encryption because it would be good for users if we care so fucking much about it. People don't use WhatsApp for anything that's so important. He doesn't really need encryption. All of these weird statements which we were laughing about. And then when we had dinner or lunch, he asked me Peter, why are you always so fucking political? I am not political at all. The only thing, I don't want the government to tax me too much and interfere with my business and let me do whatever I want. I'm that's, I explained what libertarians are, and he was very upset with me, and it was very hard not giggling. But it's this idea that you're not political means that you're very political in most cases. So that was an interesting discussion, just seeing that. And then, of course, Facebook bought them 2 weeks later, I think, or 3 weeks later, and it was all part of him getting more money from Facebook if it was encrypted. So we didn't sell, of course, but also, but it was interesting.
Wow, interesting story. All right, I'm really, let's say, where should we take it now? We have 8 minutes left.
8 minutes.
Do you have anything that you'd like to share with this crowd? I mean, these are the people who are maybe going to work with you in the future, who knows?
I'm not going to work, that's my plan.
You're not going to, yeah. Oh, I have a good question for you then. What do you think about the world coin?
About?
The world coin, the orb, the iris scanner, the OpenAI. Do you know about that one?
So I'm in the starting of making a cryptocurrency documentary.
Yes,
series.
exactly. Yeah,
we've
Sam
been talking
Altman.
about finding Satoshi. I also have a lead which no one else has, which is more. I know more than everyone else when it comes to this. But I'm very. I've been using cryptocurrencies for a long while, and it's been very important in many projects that we've been working on with activists all over the world. It's been really important. But most of the cryptocurrency is very focused on business, making money, losing money, whatever, all of these things. And generally, I don't see any.
But the world coin is set for UBI, so everybody has like a shared world wallet, digital wallet, where you can get and obviously then OpenAI wants to sort of control
do
that.
We need technology for fixing UBI. We have something called taxes, which is a technology. It's very analog in a way, but it's already in place for making UBI. So I don't really believe in that. The problem is that you take technology to solve something which has a better solution somewhere else. And I also understand that people don't think politics is that interesting because like going into a political party, everything is slow, we won't get anything fixed. But I also don't believe that technology will fix that. I think we need a shift in mentality, first of all. So the testings that's been done on UBI is that, the left wing wants UBI because we want to have a better society and people working better and everything improves for humans. The right wing is also interested in having like the capitalist part of society is also interested in UBI because it will make unions go away. Because you don't need to be a member of the union if you already have an income every month and everything is stable. So basically you will have a small portion, so you can pay less to people because they already have some income, so they just need that extra top up. So it's an interesting thing. So the discussion there is like, how should UBI look? What does it entitle? What does it mean? So I think WorldCoin is one of those things which goes in direction of like making sure that people will work for technologists in the future. So
I think I probably agree on that. So do you have any final sort of issues which you talk and?
I have many issues.
Hit it. Which one?
No, I don't know where to start.
Should we ask the audience anything you'd like to hear about?
They all want to hear about Pirate Bay. That's why they're here.
They want to hear about
Pirate Bay.
Do you?
No. That's not.
Yeah.
That's like,
so where are you now? Like mindset-wise, what are you focusing mostly on?
No, on not working. It's my. So I started a company a few years ago, a project. We're doing anonymous domain names and hosting and everything, which has been very interesting. But like I'm working on a movie about Pirate Bay, which people would think is interesting, maybe.
All right. When does that come out?
Enough, it's a Hollywood movie, which is interesting. So
all
we're
right.
probably recording it next year, which is also interesting because the Swedish TV, Norwegian, Finnish TV is also doing a TV series at the same time that they believed I was part of.
So you'll get famous now, even more.
No.
I guess.
No.
Wow.
No, but the interesting part of it is that now, since it's been like 15, 20 years ago since I think Pirate Bay turns 20 this year, maybe already did. We always had an agreement that we would close down Pirate Bay on the 10th birthday in order to say this day we were not going to be around anymore. And the people left decided that they still want to run Pirate Bay. And I'm not super happy about that because I like when you give up things. But I think it's an interesting thing to see how society has shifted in 20 years. Like what used to be this idea of an open internet that will bring, information and accessibility to everyone has now been like everything is behind, paywalls. We're locking things up, stealing people's private data. Companies own them. It's a very different world than what we was promised 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. For me, that's like what I'm hoping that the movie and also the TV series will have like this discussion about, to like make a discussion about what do we want in the future, because we now know what happened in the past 20 years.
Yeah, and what didn't work.
Yeah. And also like, we have this, the interesting thing with Pirate Bay is like we also work with WikiLeaks, Snowden, all of these other things that were very familiar. And even though people supported everything we were doing, they didn't really follow up on it. Mm. So like we did all of that. I wanted to close down Pirate Bay because then someone else would have to like take the reins and just continue. But since we stuck around, no one really did. And no one wanted to be the new WikiLeaks because Julian's case is as bizarre as it is. So people don't want to sacrifice that. Mm. So that's kind of the sad realization.
Was it a huge sacrifice for you, everything you did? No. Would you have done it again?
Of course. Yeah, but the biggest problem with Pirate Bay was that one of the world's best cryptographers, Gottfried, he didn't encrypt his laptop. So all of the evidence in the Pirate Bay case was from his unencrypted laptop, that he had his source code for one of the best encryptions in the world, which is, a mental mindfuck. Otherwise, I'm super happy with what we did. And like in prison, I got love letters every day. So that's kind of amazing. You should also send love letters when people are not in prison. It's a good tip. I've started doing that after. It's people like think either you're weird or stalking them. I don't know, but it's a nice thing. Love letters are great.
All right, I think we have time for one last comment, so you can decide your
comment. That's
final
very open. No,
or advice, maybe.
yeah, so don't listen to Nazis.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good one.
Yes.
Let's do that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, that's it. Thank you to Peter Sunde. Thank you so much for joining in.